Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm creating a new art journal page with Art Anthology projects, and this time I'm trying a little bit a new technique by not coloring in the entire page but just stay in the center and leave it kind of white on the outside. Let's see how that goes. I started by just adding some texture paste using the honeycomb stencil onto my art journal page, and next up I'm stamping dragonfly onto some paper that I got from an old book where I ripped out the pages, where I used the book for some art pieces. So now I'm just adding the dragonfly on there and then I fuzzy cutting it out. And I had my difficulties because that's a really new stamp, so I had to stamp it a couple of times to really make sure that I get a crisp image. And then after a while I decided I should use my MISTI, so just in case I can stamp it twice onto the same spot and make sure that I get a crisp image, like if I stamp it 2 or 3 times, that I get a crisp image then. So you can see it here, but then I decided that it is too dark, so I'm stamping it again onto a different area of my page. So I'm using black archival ink because I want to color over it and I want to make sure that it's all safe and doesn't start to smear. So I'm using archival ink and then fuzzy cut it out. Next up, I'm using my Art Anthology Colorations sprays in Timeless, Juicy, and Salmon and start coloring in the butterfly. Because that paper is already from a really old book, I'm just using some clear gesso and cover it before I start coloring it in with the coloration sprays. Cover it up with the clear gesso just to make sure that the paper doesn't start to rip or anything. So in the way I'm applying the coloration sprays is I carefully put just a little bit onto my craft mat, and I really just took off the lid and carefully like swapped it on there, and I was a little worried that I end up adding way too much there, but it ended up all right. So there you can see. So, and I'm taking one color at a time. And what I'm doing is that I'm adding the coloration sprays, try to heat set them in between, but because those little slippery dragonflies were kind of flying all over the place, I decided to not dry them in between every color and then just add the colors and then at the end dry them with all of them together. So I'm going from light to dark and just dabbing the dragonflies into the coloration spray and then clean off my work surface and then heat set it, as I said. At the end, after I'm done with all the darker colors, I realized that the orange from the Timeless got a little bit, like kind of disappeared. So I'm adding the Timeless separately onto the dragonflies by directly dabbing it on top of them with the nozzle. I guess you can call it that. And then I just put them aside and let them dry on their own while I'm continuing doing while continue working on my other art journal page. So after the texture paste was dry on my art journal page, I'm using the Sorbet in Mermaid and the Velvet in Lagoon and Limeaid and start coloring in the art journal page. So, and because those colors and paints are rather thick, I'm thinning them down with some water. So I'm applying them rather thin because I want them to mix together very well and blend really well. And then I add a whole bunch of water on top to start really blending those paints together, that you don't see the harsh brush stroke that you sometimes see with thicker paints. So that's the trick that I'm using to just thin those down, and then they start blending on their own, and I obviously, as you can see, work a little bit more also with my brush. So layer 1, I added all 3 colors, including the Sorbet, onto the page, and then I'm adding a second layer because I thought that it's not quite bright enough and I wanted to have a little bit more saturation for the paints. So I'm adding a second layer, but this time just the 2 velvets because I didn't want to add more glitter from the Sorbets. I love that it has just this little bit glitter in some of those areas, and then the rest is more matte off the page. And I'm doing the same thing again. So I'm just dabbing it with my brush. My brush is really wet, so I had it in water too, and then I add more water on top of it to really get those paints blending very well. So next up, I'm just putting a little bit on the side on my craft mat, add a whole bunch of water to it, and then use my brush to create some splatters like diagonally over the page. I didn't want to have it all over the page, just really like basically in a stripe from the top left to the bottom right. And I do that again with the 2 velvet colors, which is Lagoon and Limeaid, just watering them down really well, mixing it in with the water as you can see here, and then splatter it all over the place with a brush. First with a little wider brush, and then I'm using a little smaller brush to get some smaller splatters too, just to mix it up a little bit. After I'm done, I'm again heat setting everything. So that is really important, that between all the layers you heat set it. That, I mean, you want to mix it in one layer each, but if you work in different layers, I usually want to heat set them so they don't activate with the layer on top. Then I'm adding a little bit more interest. This is a random scribbly stamp that I got like forever ago at a garage sale with some gibberish script, but I really like how the script looks like, and stamped that with a light gray. So then I'm working on my embellishments, and that's always a procedure with me because I'm looking through my stash. I have too much. I have to use up more. And try to figure out what fits onto the page. And then I decided to use that high that is on an acetate piece, and then I found some gray just die cuts that were laying around, and I added some gold metal effects paint on top of them that makes it really shine nicely. And this is not a bright gold paint. This is really just to add an accent on top of whatever you're using it on. And I love how it looks on those gray pieces, that you have this gold shimmer on there, and I thought it fits really well to that page. So now I'm just assembling my embellishments. Again, I had them random from, I don't even know the brands for some of those, where I got them from. And I found this film strip, which I thought is a really nice add-on for the page as the base. And adhere that with my washi tape. And then I'm adding my little plants in the background, just assembling them the way I did it off camera already. So I kind of knew where I wanted stuff to go. And then I'm just trying to see if it still looks good. So the tricky part with the acetate is it's rather hard to adhere that down. So I was thinking back and forth how I could get the high to stick to that page. So I took my tiny attacher and attached the one part to the film strip. And then I was trying to figure out how to, because it was, as you can see here, a little wobbly on there, I was trying to figure out how else I can adhere it, quote unquote, to the page. So I ended up, and you will see later in the video, I ended up poking holes inside my page and adding another stapler around the edge. But first I had to adhere my little dragonflies, and I'm trying to really press them down, as the background, obviously because of the texture paste, is rather wonky. But by pressing it down, it really helps to get it all safe. So here you can see I'm just using my little knife and poke some holes into the page, and then just take a separate piece of a stapler and basically staple it by hand. But this way the high stays in place. It adds just a little bit more interest there, so I thought it was kind of nice. And then I'm just finishing up the page. I hope you enjoyed today's Art Anthology project. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, if you want to see more projects from me in the future. And then I hope you have a great rest of the day. Thanks for watching. Bye!